Hello, everyone, and welcome to November 7th, 2025. How is everyone doing this beautiful evening? The time is about 6:28, and today is a beautiful and wonderful Friday. I just celebrated my birthday last week, so thank you very much to me. Let's insert the clap noise. Clap, 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 clap. Yes, that's right. It's amazing. I will not divulge or disclose my age, but all I could say is baby from the 80s, and that's all I'll say. Also celebrated my daughter's birthday last week, which was phenomenal. She was born on Halloween, so Halloween baby. So definitely, it's a very interesting time for myself and her as I am succumbed to unfortunately have to share my birthday, which honestly I really don't mind. I don't know if you guys are the same way, but the older you get, the less inclined you are to want to celebrate your birthday. You kind of generally just want to fly under the radar and hope that people just forget it in some aspect and press play or press forward and on to the next and following day. I don't know what it is about that, but sometimes as you get older, you start realizing that the less time you have on this earth, the more you just want to speed past the whole birthday shit. And I cannot wait though. However, that's the one thing that I want to slow down, and that is the holidays. I look forward to Thanksgiving very much because it's just before Christmas. This is usually when we start seeing Mariah Carey do her thing. And we all know what that song is. And good Lord, man, that woman makes a killing every single Christmas because, of course, it's the freaking anthem that every kid, including all my children, every single one of them knows that song. But I digress. Hey, very well produced song. Obviously, was a mad hit when it came out, and it's been very successful to date. But apart from that, I do want to dive into what the content of today's episode is going to be. Last week, we were kind of talking about cell phones and whether it was too soon and why is too soon, etc., and some of the consequences with it. Um, I'm still on the fence on it because honestly, my daughter's eventually going to have a cell phone at some point, and my middle child will eventually want one. And I have started thinking about my son eventually. Again, I got plenty of time with these kids, but it's shit you actually have to start thinking about now. And the more I see kids at such a young age engaging with other children their age, honestly, I don't think they're really ready. I mean, shit, do you guys remember what the hell you guys were doing at 10 years old? And were you conscious enough to know what you were doing at that time? I can probably guess more than likely, probably not. So that was last week's episode. Um, and most recently, what I did want to dive into is, dude, what the hell is going on in politics and everybody either dropping dead or getting sick around Trump? I mean, I think just up to a few days ago, we had a gentleman in the Oval Office pass out while they were having a meeting about the health crisis, which was hilarious to me. And then now you have pictures of Mr. Donald Trump falling asleep and dozing off when they're going over medical stuff. So there's definitely a health issue there with Mr. Trump, and I really don't know what that looks like or why that is. But obviously, based on the stuff that I've read, the gentleman doesn't really necessarily take care of himself too well. He doesn't have the most awesome diet, but I digress. So, into today's episode. Before we dive into that, I did want to touch on Pro Football Focus, my friends. So, San Francisco 49ers have a divisional game coming up this freaking weekend, and that is against the LA Rams, who are currently, I think, in first place of the division, or the Seahawks, one of the two. I don't know what to expect, y'all. With so many injuries of the San Francisco 49ers and them making not any moves at the trade deadline, it's flipping frustrating. But at the same time, I also understand that maybe they don't want to cash in their chips for this season. It's kind of like a sneaky way for them to admit that maybe they won't go as far as they thought they were going to get, and this is what they're okay with. Mac Jones is still winning by the skin of his teeth. My guy has bruised ribs, probably a bad kneecap or something like that. But either way, the Niners are what they are. At this point, I've managed my expectations. I have to accept what is. I cannot dwell on what it could have been. if Warner had not been injured. Oh fuck, dude. I mean, let's talk about the strength and conditioning folks, dude, or what's going on with that field, bro. Because I think there's the new guy that just started it. He just literally got signed, got injured in the practice field, and is out for a couple weeks. I mean, what the fuck, dude? Like, honestly, what? You signed the dotted line on the San Francisco 49ers, they give you a paycheck, and immediately you blow out a kneecap? I mean, it sounds fucking hilarious, but honestly, that's really what it looks like. At this point, I don't even know what the hell's going on with that team, what the expectation should be, what it's going to become. All I know is I don't know what to expect this season, dude. I really don't know. There's a lot of people on conspiracy theories about that the NFL scripts their entire season and they kind of navigate through it and they give it to certain teams. I mean, this year I think the Super Bowl is going to be at Levi Stadium here in our neck of the woods. That's going to be weird. Us not being there. And I think this is twice now that we've been competitive, and honestly, we get hit with the injury bug and we are what they are. Brock Purdy has turf toe. Shit, we don't know when the hell he's going to be coming back. There's controversy there. Anyway, I digress, and let's dive right in. So, today's podcast episode, ladies and gents, is going to be pretty interesting and fun. I want to touch on a couple things that I spoke with my family about, and some things that I think I've spoken about in this channel. And I'm very intrigued about the history of things, especially things that we don't know, like mystery shit, right? And one of the things in particular that I find to be very, very interesting is Area 51, which I know a lot of podcasts have done this until they're blue in the face. I get it, but I also want to speak on it. And hopefully I bring you a different perspective of what it is, the origins of it, and some retrospect kind of giving you a different view of what I personally think it is. And it might resonate with you, right? I won't be using so many fancy words or scripted stuff like that. I am literally shooting from the flipping hip, dude. So if this resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. Subscribers really do help this channel. They allow us to be seen and to be heard in various places, in various forums. I have to do better on my end to also upload this stuff and follow through and upload multiple Fripple episodes. But dude, it takes a lot to edit when you're a one-man operation, let alone make time. When you have soccer tournaments, like we're going to have a game tomorrow for my daughter, who all of you know that are listening. She's in a soccer team, and we're going to do that. And then come next weekend, it's going to be a state cup game. And that's going to be something entirely different out in the city of, I think, Modesto, which is like about an hour and a half or an hour from where we live. More of the story is, for those parents who travel and do travel ball, y'all know the sacrifices of all this shit, because honestly, it's tough as hell. It wears on you. You don't get a weekend, and we're into the holidays, man. Shit's flying by. So, but let's digress and let's dive right into it. So, tonight, I want you to picture a place that doesn't exist, at least not officially. A place so quiet the dust remembers every footprint, so bright that at noon it erases the horizon, so dark at night the stars look like holes punched in velvet. For decades, this place was a rumor with a runway, a dot in nobody's map, a blank square labeled not with a town's name, but simply with a number. So we're going to talk about Area 51. We'll wander that blank square together across the salt of a dry lake bed called Groom Lake, into hangars with no signs, past bus stops that don't appear on schedules, planes that land with zero labels. We're going to follow the thread from Cold War necessity to pop culture legend, from test flights to tall tales, from science to a single belated final yes, it does exist. So let's start a little bit about the myth. Before the word alien even stuck to the number 51, there was a rectangle of land folded into the Nevada test site. Itself was a vast checkboard of restricted zones on a government chart, and these boxes needed labels. One of them, just one, would inherit a destiny far larger than its grid line. That's Groom Lake. Groom Lake sits in the high desert, a chalk white playa that becomes nature's longest runway when it's bone dry. Mountains hunch around it like bodyguards. The closest real city is Las Vegas. But Vegas is a mirage world that minds its own business. Out here, the desert isn't empty, it's just private. Privacy, as it turns out, was the most valuable commodity back in the 50s. The US was staring across an ocean of ideology at a rival that had sealed its borders with steel and secrecy. We're referring to Russia. Satellites that weren't quite ready, and balloons that could drift, and you know what I mean. What you needed was a way to look without being seen, that could fly higher than a missile could reach. So, the country, at that time in the 1950s, built a plane that seemed like a rumor itself. Needle thin wings, a body shone like a mirror in the sun, and the U 2 was born. But you cannot test something like that is sensitive at any ordinary base. You need a lake bed that looks like a runway and a mountain ring that looks like a wall. And so Area 51 had both. And more importantly, it had no neighbors and nobody peeking or looking, which is basically what they wanted. So the ranch, the water town, the U2, and the quiet beginnings. The first crew who came didn't call it Area 51, they actually called it the ranch. Some called it a water town, a coy little code name that made the edge of the desert sound like a lakeshore town. Buildings were fabricated in plain. A strip was carved into the playa like a part in a comb. Workers arrived on unmarked planes and buses before dawn, and they left after dark, completely private. This was all in the 1950s. Their families got used to the sentence, I'm going out of town, I'm going out of town, I'm out of town. That was the language. And then the U2 lifted into that hard blue Nevada sky and wrote new rules across it. At altitudes where the air barely became its air, pilots wore partial pressure suits and learned how to be lonely in a way very few humans had ever known. The airplane could stare down its rivals' secrets, which was completely unheard of, but each stare was a risk, and every test required a place where risk could live in silence. And Area 51 specialized in both. Silence, though it's rarely quiet, the desert hums. Generators throb behind sheet metal, radios click, feet hurry, valves whine. Night tests paint brief lines in the darkness, and local miners, ranchers, long haul truckers had a glimpse of lights moving wrong, stars that accelerate, orange glows that rise like elevator cars, and the official story says weather balloons. The unofficial story said something stranger with the U2. And so the monologue began. In one ear, classified physics, and the other, the public's wondering, a folk science that makes shapes out of lights and guesses out of balance. So we went from the U2 to the A12 to the Blackbird. Secrecy never stands still, and all of us know that, and neither does anxiety. So when a U2 fell into a Soviet missile, the United States learned the worst lesson. Height is not the same as safety. If above is reachable, try beyond. So enter the aircraft that looked like the future abducted it, the A-12 Oxcart, godparent to the SR-71 Blackbird. Titanium bones, sharp angles, and a shape that drank the sky at 3 times the speed of sound. Its skin expanded with heat on the ground, fuel would dribble through gaps that sealed only at speed. It was an airplane that became itself only when it was too fast to photograph. So, where do you test such a contradiction? Where do you teach pilots to fly something that changes shape with temperature? Where do you plant poles with odd facade objects measured radar reflections? Where do you blow up a dozen ideas and keep the one that doesn't blow back? You do it on a quiet lake at the center of a loud world. Area 51, whether you call it Groom Lake, Watertown, or The Ranch, became a crucible in a place where budget lines had no headlines, where material science grew teeth, where palleted dreams either took off or burned out. The A-12 thundered out of there, outlining the future in a thin graphite streak. Its offspring, the SR-71, took that future on a tour. Meanwhile, on the highway below, someone's kid was probably looking up at the backseat and said, "Mom, the star just moved," without even knowing all the mysteries that Area 51 would possess. But this is how secrecy actually works. We like to imagine secrecy as magic, cloaks, passwords, or a trap door that opens only if you whisper the right word. But secrecy is mostly paperwork and process. Compartmentalization clearances in 1,000 ways to say you don't need to know. At Area 51, you'd build walls made of schedules. If you worked fuel systems, you didn't need the avionics story. If you flew the test, you didn't need the manufacturing gossip. If you drove the bus, you drove the bus. The desert did the rest. Total secrecy. And yet, the human heart hates a vacuum. When the government says nothing, rumor speaks louder. Rumor is a polyglot. Rumor is tireless. Rumor mixes a real test run with a misremembered sunrise and it pours into a glass labeled UFO into that glass. The ice never melts because people were looking at that sky or wondering, what the hell am I looking at? So the rumors began. So secrecy worked, but it worked too well. It protected projects from prying eyes. Yes, it also protected myths from facts. The result? A brand that was born without any marketing at all, if you really think about it. It kind of built itself. People could not figure out what the hell was going on, so they conjured up their own ideas of what it was. And the legend of Area 51 continued. So the UFO culture took off. Let's talk about the skies over Nevada, not the altitude, but the angles. At 60,000 or 70,000 feet, the world looks bent. Sunlight hits metal at unexpected times. Contrails stretch like sash cords. To someone standing in Blowing Alley parking lot in the dust, it can look like a star made out of choice. Pilots, civilian and military filed reports. The Air Force kept logs. Some sightings line up neatly with known but classified test windows. Many don't. And in that gap between that public truly saw what the government would eventually admit, the UFO culture found a temple. And Area 51 was the altar. Remote, forbidden, photogenic in its emptiness. The lore thickened. Crash sites moved in from the desert margins. Reversed engineered engines hummed in the collective imagination. Strange metals that bent without bending. Fields with impossible names. Books wrote themselves. TV shows took the tour bus. The once nameless base became the world's most famous secret, but never fully acknowledged. So, life at a place that you can't name. What does that look like? While the legend multiplied, people still had to live the work. Imagine clocking in at a location that you can't tell your spouse, then flying home on a plane with no airline logo. Imagine birthdays where the cake is real but the job is not. Imagine a paycheck that buys your kid a bike but doesn't buy you permission to say where you were last Thursday. Then there's a bus schedule. Janet flights, as they're nicknamed, moving like ghost veins between Las Vegas and the lake bed. There's a cafeteria where conversations hover safely around sports and the temperature. There's a locker where a tiny amount of titanium dust never quite leaves your cuffs. There's pride, too, the quiet kind. The kind that lives in the breath before a test and the sigh after a clean landing. And there are the costs: long commutes, longer silences, the knowledge that the most interesting thing about your day must never be the first thing you say over dinner. Flashpoint stories that welded aliens to Area 51. In the late 1980s, a story lands on local TV, the lights a fuse. A man steps forward of claims of reverse engineering otherworldly craft near Area 51 at a subsite called S4. Fueled by an element that sounds like a riddle, he describes 9 saucers secretly beyond anything normal in a science that skips rungs on the ladder. It's important here to separate culture from proof. Independent corroboration never arrives in a way that satisfies skeptics or historians. But culturally, the effects is atomic. Overnight, Area 51, because of Mr. Bob Lazar, was created. So, what did the government do? For years, official documents danced around the lake bed's existence. If you asked, you got hedges, restricted training ranges, test facilities, nothing to see here. Then, after many seasons of requests and declassifications, a simple fact made it into daylight. Area 51 exists, and historically, it supported programs like the U2 and A12. But the admission didn't close the book, it just changed the genre. And this is where it all comes down to. What really happens at Area 51? And this is the stuff that I really want to ask you guys. So, me personally, do I want to know what goes on in Area 51? I do, but then I don't. And I don't know if you guys are like that, but sometimes if something is kept secret for a reason, because they feel that maybe the public is not ready to come to terms with the realities are because of the religious aspect of it or the sociological impact that it will have on nearby communities and the states, then maybe that is for the best. But what I would like to know is if, in fact, the UFOs and the stuff that we do see, in fact, are things that are created by us, are things that we inherited, and are simply adapting and modifying, because then I would want to know by whom. Because then it changes absolutely everything that we know about our history, right? It will either validate or completely dismiss some things that we've read. I mean, I can sit here and tell you guys about the book of Enoch, and if you guys listen have not had any experience with that particular book, I recommend it. It's one of the forbidden ones from the Bible, but the way it reads and the descriptions that it has on its content, it's kind of describing a UFO. And basically, Enoch could take, in summary, right? Enoch basically gets taken into, air quotes here, heaven, and is shown the world and is kind of taught what the world is, its history, where we're going, where we're trending, why things are what they are. And that's about it. And then so Enoch comes down with all this information, and people basically write him off and saying like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about here. And it scares the shit out of people. So much so that they decided to remove that particular book from the New Testament. I mean, the fact that the Bible has 3 versions, you're talking about the Ethiopian Bible, which in some cases, and according to Ethiopians themselves, that is the original Bible that contains all the books. And then you have the Old Testament, which shrunk that particular book to a smaller version, to now the New Testament, which removed even further books from that, right? But that's the stuff that for me is kind of like It's problematic for me. Like, who's making these decisions to dictate to us, the public, what's in our best interest? Or are they manipulating the narrative to fit their own? Are they only keeping the stories that benefit their overall plan and intention of what they want us to do? Do they want us to behave in a certain way, coach us in a certain way, so therefore they'll only show us one version of things? And it's for us to either follow or not? Because I'll tell you this right now, because if that's the case, that might have worked back in the 50s or in the 40s or in the 30s, but now with social media, now with the internet, I mean, fuck, there's a lot of shit that you might think that a lot of people don't know about, and a lot of them do. You'd be very surprised. I mean, I have nephews that I have brought up in this particular podcast itself that they themselves have done research on their own stuff and created their own narrative and realized that a lot of the stuff that's being taught to us in school is incorrect or it's one-sided. So with Area 51's mysteries and everything else that it contains, I do want to know, but at the same time I don't. But that is the one thing that I definitely want confirmation on. Is the technology that we're seeing these days, has this shit already been here? Did we just happen to find a manual, a script, or something where all this stuff already pre-existed? Because then it throws a lot of those stories of Mesopotamia, of Sumerian culture, all those like previous Atlantis, all those civilizations that were built in myth. It now validates truth in a lot of that things. And are all of us ready for that? Are we ready to be accepting of that? And I'll dive into something in particular before I go into this. So, with that question in mind that I had about Area 51 in particular, there is another mystery for me that's kind of like a head scratcher: the moon. Did you guys know that the moon wasn't necessarily written about until maybe the 1400s or 1200s or something like that? That in some cultures, the moon just appeared from one day to the next and the seasons began to change. I mean, if you really think about it, the impact that the moon has on our day to day, on our planet, is absolutely incredible. The balance that it brings to the oceans, to gravity, to our world, it's amazing. But there's also theories and things that are tied to the moon. And here's some funny ones, right? Like, number one, full moons can make you crazy. For example, since ancient times, full moons have been associated with odd or insane behavior, including sleepwalking, suicide, illegal activity, fits of violence, and of course, transforming into werewolves. Indeed, the word lunacy and lunatic come from the Roman goddess of the moon, Luna. But what's funny about this shit is that if you really think about it, do you ever notice that your mood changes when you do have a full moon? Is that a fact? I mean, I don't know. It's because I'm being told that I'm going to act differently when it's a full moon, and my body says, oh, it's a full moon, so let's fucking act awry. Or if there's actually a reaction to the moon that is making us act this way. I mean, that's some of the shit that really makes you fucking think if you really think about it. Another one, right? That aliens supposedly inhabit the moon. In the 1820s, the Bavarian astronomer Franz von Paula Grothe claimed to have glimpsed entire cities on the moon with his telescope. He wrote that the Lunarians who lived there had built sophisticated buildings, roads, and forts, and most of his colleagues scoffed at his assertion, of course, but he eventually got a small lunar crater named after him. Why? I mean, this is the shit that really trips me the fuck out. People like, okay, so let's put it this way. Imagine your buddy, right? And he has his fucking telescope looking at the moon and says, "Hey, bro, I think there's people living in the moon." I mean, honestly, you probably could be like, buddy, what are you doing? I mean, the fuck are you looking at? And then they show you the telescope, and the way that he describes certain things, you look at it like, damn, all right. But then you call him lunatic, but then when he passes away, you literally name craters after him. I mean, let's think about that, yo. Hold on one second. Alrighty, I'm back. So the other thing that I also read about in regards to the moon conspiracy and everything that it's relating to it is that the moon controls fertility. And I'm not sure if a lot of folks know, but because of the menstrual and lunar cycles are similar in length, the early civilizations believed that the moon determined when women could become pregnant. And it's the reason why there were so many moon deities, from the Chinese goddess Chang'e to Mama Aquila from the Incas. In the 1950s, the Czech doctor Eugene Jonas stumbled across an ancient Assyrian astrological text stating that women are fertile during phases of the moon. He based an entire family planning method on this particular hypothesis, telling his patients they ovulated when the moon was in the same position as when they were born. And believe it or not, according to another theory, that particular practice still persists to this day. Full moons tend to have an uptick in births, flooding maternity wards, and mothers to be in labor. Recent studies have turned up little statistical evidence for the moon induced baby booms. However, it exists. And here's the other one that, for me in particular, honestly, guys, I really do think it's trippy. That the moon is actually a hollow spacecraft. And I think there was a movie that was released a few years ago. I think it's called Moonfall. And the theory was that there was an alien spaceship or virus or AI that was generated by our own doing, our own human race in a different galaxy in a different time. And the AI got so out of hand and it became self aware and it became to destroy that which it created or that created it. So the human race fought against this particular AI entity and spread and fled their galaxy. And in the whole entire process to save their humanity, they fertilized different galaxies and planets to keep their race and their DNA going. And supposedly, the moon was the source of all of this that contains all this information from an ancient civilization that pre-existed our current galaxy. Weird shit. But honestly, there's been some really weird scientific facts about the moon. For example, it's dense as shit, and there is, when you drill into the moon, or the times that it was drilled into the moon, at the very top of the moon, the dirt and the lunar particles are much newer than the ones inside. Or actually, hold up. The ones on the surface are much older than the ones inside. One of those two. Basically, what's saying is that the surface of the moon is newer. It's basically remnants of when you excavate something and you bury it. The older stuff will be on the outside because you uprooted something, and all the new shit will be in the inside because you buried it. Get what I'm saying? Hopefully I did a good job of explaining that. Maybe I'm not. That one's fucking sounds like a train wreck. But anyway, that's the one that for me kind of resonates. And also that the moon, it doesn't spin, it rotates. It's got a perfect axis. It's got a perfect ratio and balance. It's got the biggest moon in the galaxy tied to us, and it's just weird, man. And then there's the other one that a lot of people also like to constantly remind us is that we never really went to the moon. So, and this is the whole moon theory that Russia actually beat us to the moon and the US just kind of faked everything at Area 51 at Groom Lake. And that there's a hangar in Groom Lake, which was used as a studio to fake the landing. So, despite overwhelming evidence of the contrary, some people believe that the Apollo moon landings were faked by NASA, which used doctored photos, staged videos, and other ploys to dupe the public. Proponents of these easily debunked hoaxes argue that the technology was not advanced enough for astronauts to reach the moon and return to home safely. They also point to the ostensible signs of studio trickery, including the fact that the American flag planted by Apollo 11 crew and the lunar surface appeared to flutter in the vacuum of space, which is impossible because there's no air. So it's, and then there's another one that the Nazis had a base on the moon. After World War II, rumors circulated that the German astronauts had traveled to the moon and established a top secret facility there. Some even speculated that Adolf Hitler faked his own death, fled the planet, and lived the rest of his days on the moon. I mean, there's just a bunch of shit that's tied to the moon, and some of the stuff you can say, man, a lot of this is silly. But some of the stuff, if you really think about it, it makes you think, what in fact is up there? How come we haven't gone back? Let me put that right there. We've sent probes to Mars. We've sent probes to Juniper. We've sent probes to Uranus. We've sent probes to all these different freaking planets in our so-called galaxy. And yet we cannot find the ability to send folks back to the freaking moon. And it's the closest thing to us than any other planet. Why? We spend so much money and all these other resources and all these other items, and yet for some gosh forsaken reason, we refuse to go back. It kind of makes you think, oh, there's nothing there. Well, are you sure? Because the Chinese are thinking about going back up there. I mean, there's so many freaking ridiculous theories that the opposite side of the moon that we do not see from our venue, our point of view. There is a theory that behind on the dark side of the moon, there is something there that we are not allowed or forbidden to see. That's supposedly the United States and NASA, when they went up there, they saw some shit that they weren't supposed to see, and they were approached by some folks and basically told to stay away. And since then, we've been exactly doing that. I mean, the more you really think about these things, the more you kind of grasp and see that maybe we are being played. Maybe we are falling into a narrative and we're doing exactly what they want us to do and only seeing the things that we should be seeing. So then it raises the questions like, okay, why? Who is the one that's determining what we can't and what we can't see? And who the hell knows it all, and why isn't this a thing? I mean, do you want to know about Area 51? I do, to some extent. Do I want to know what the fuck the moon is? Yeah. Because if it's a moon, it's a moon. But if it's not, I want to know what the hell it is. And if it's someone up there or an alien species that is completely against us, then maybe I don't want to know. I know it sounds kind of contradicting, but at this point, I mean, fuck, dude. I mean, like, I'm in my 40s. I don't know how much time I got left on this planet, but the older I get, the more curious I am about how it all started and the meaning of all of this, right? And I think that's all what all of us really want. We are tired of being lied to and manipulated on, like news media, the social media, the narratives, and things like that. And this is gonna hit on something that's a little bit kind of controversial here, but For example, like I was talking to my nephews, and we were having a in-depth conversation about Israel and Palestine, which I know it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of folks. So I'll make it short. You know, when you look into the history of Israel and when you look into the history of Palestine, it's not very positive on either side. It's not friendly. It's not peaceful. It's a region of the world that has seen nothing but damage and war and battle and just pain. So many wonderful people come from both sides. There is beautiful, wonderful human beings that are both Jewish and of Islamic descent. But because of the historical damage and the history between both nations is so sour and it's so built on destruction that you're talking about generational pain, that it's going to take even longer for there to be actual peace in the Middle East. And then when you when you look at it from a 1,000 foot view, who is really benefiting from all of this? And let me put it out there like this. So, do do any of you know why some slumlords in poverty-stricken cities or regions and territories allow for all the bullshit to happen in those areas? Why do they allow things to deteriorate? Think about it. You're done thinking? Let me explain it to you. If you have property that you once built up and it's phenomenal and it's great and it's just doing wonderful. At this point, you've already paid that property. You already own it outright and it's just sitting there, just creating equity based on where it is and inflation. But now the narrative or the norm is basically, hey, you know, we're going away from little malls and little shopping centers like that. And people are starting to go on the internet. So you have no more tenants. So you start letting shit go and you deteriorate and you let it go to trash, completely to trash. And again, you're still getting money from all the equity. Then what do? You sell it, right? You already own it. You're going to make a profit no matter what. However, if you're an investor and you buy a property right next door and that property is losing value, you're not going to build anything until the property value goes down so low that you're going to be able to buy it, build something on it, and then make money off that. That's how you flip it. So think about it in the terms of a country. Who benefits? What are its resources? Its resources are oil and spices and other items. What's one way to keep costs down? I just used the example of a community and gentrification. I just used that example. Allow them to kill each other, destroy one another, so that way, whenever we come in with our own agenda, we can come out looking like heroes and we give them a little bit of money. And in return, we get that oil at a cheap price. It sounds dark, it sounds twisted, it's fucked up, but it's facts. If you really want to do even more research into um, the Bill Gates Foundation, if you really do your research, Bill Gates did not invent Microsoft. The software already existed. He bought the software from somebody else that had already created it. He built basically a combination of multiple softwares that already existed and made them into one. Not by inventing a damn thing, by simply just putting them all together. That's all he did, but they were already there. All he did was put piece one plus piece two plus piece three and make it work, and there you go. You have Windows. But if you guys really follow the Bill Gates Foundation and really want to go down this rabbit hole, look in the places in the countries in which the Bill Gates Foundation has donated money. Philanthropy. The places in which the Gates Foundation has donated money are the places in which the Gates Foundation has used for resources for the other investments. Look into what the Gates Foundation or Bill Gates' other investments are apart from Microsoft. Chipping manufacturer. I find it interesting that he donates a crap ton of money to Thailand. Who's the biggest chip maker in the entire planet? Thailand. Taiwan. Where's all the money at? Taiwan. Thailand. Where's the biggest resources of diamonds? Africa. Whereas Bill Gates donating a shit ton of money? Africa. So it's funny as hell in a way, because it's so obvious now. As you get older, you're noticing the game that you're being played into, and we're all falling for it. We are being handed a script, in my opinion, that we are supposed to follow and adhere to. And we have one or two choices. Either we call a spade, or simply we just look the other way where we know where we're getting played. Because people will call you a maniac. Like I'm sure some of you are probably gonna be like, "Come on, dude, you fucking lost me at aliens and shit and fucking boom." Like, I get it, dude. I get it. Okay, I get it. I know that conspiracy theories are topics and agendas that a lot of people just don't like to speak on. I know that the narrative of Palestine and Israel are topics that a lot of people are really hard on, because they can't get past the fact that it's battle and people are manipulated and destroyed. I get that. Kids pass away, parents losing their families. There's a lot of nothing positive is coming from all this stupid shit. That's my whole point. But if you look at a 1,000 foot view, who the fuck is benefiting from all this shit? It's watching two people fight to the death and having people come in and out and grabbing whatever's falling out of their pockets, and then giving it back to them and saying, "Hey, I noticed that you lost your wallet, but I found this one. I'm going to give you your wallet or this wallet right back." When in fact, it was yours to begin with. You were just too immersed in your fight and in your battle with the other human being that you forgot what the fuck you had from the very get-go. And people are giving you the very same shit that you literally had from the very jump. You guys get what I'm saying? Do you guys understand that? And that is something that I'm trying to teach my kids and teach them, that not to be so immersed in the depravity of that a lot of people use, and they use their religion as a trigger, because they know that in the Middle East you have Jewish folks and people from Islam that absolutely love their religion to the death. I mean, we're talking about Judaism and Islamic battles that have gone on for centuries, man. This shit won't get fucking solved in 2025. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, like, there's generational damage. There's people that lost grandparents and their parents, and those kids are raising their kids, and the same shit is happening over and over and over again. And you have other countries and other nations using those two nations to fight one another, and they come in and saying, "Hey, I got your back. Here is some more weapons so you guys can continue to destroy each other. But hey, on the back end, why don't you let me use the resources while you got there? I see that you're not using this area, this land. How about if I give you some money so that way you can continue buying weapons from me, and I'm going to build some shit in your country, and I'm going to give you a cut for allowing me to do that." Do you guys understand how silly and asinine that fucking looks? It's like allowing. It's like you're in a battle with your neighbor, and somebody comes over from a different street and hands you a gun and says, "Hey, here's a gun so you can shoot that neighbor and call it a day." Hey, but I noticed that you have a very big garden in the back that has very fertile soil. Can I plant some shit in your garden because I gave you a gun? And then guess what? And then I'm gonna sell what I cultivate from your area, and I'm gonna give you a piece, okay? And you're like, yeah. Just continue giving me guns, and they're gonna continue planting and shit in your back fucking yard. Next thing you know, you go to your backyard. You like 90% of your fucking backyard is no longer yours; it's somebody else's, and it was your land to begin with. And then you have these two beautiful countries, these two beautiful nations fighting one another, and they make it about religion. And whenever you make anything about religion, you're never gonna have a victor. It's never going to flip and end ever. And even if one extremist takes out the other, it's always tit for tat, eye for an eye. That shit doesn't do a fucking thing but just cause more damage and pain. You're just recultivating hate for one another. That's never gonna go away. And the media eats it up. And I go back to this when in regards to parenting, and I'm gonna put a bow on this episode after this. We celebrate we don't celebrate victories enough in this world. We are so immersed and enamored of celebrating fails, losses, humor at somebody else's expense that we have forgotten to lose touch of celebrating the victories. When do you see a Jewish person going to somebody from Palestine and holding hands and saying prayer together? Where the fuck are those videos? Because I'm sure they exist, but we don't see them. Where are the conversations that these prime ministers are having with one another about actually having peace? Or is it because they're both being manipulated by some other people that they are relying on? That's the sad thing about it. When you see countries being manipulated, and instead it's causing damage and destroying families in their own countries, and it's not going to get any better. So be awake, do your research, avoid following the narrative, ask the questions why, and ask them now. And if you have enough people asking questions, just like they did in the 50s, asking about Area 51, eventually somebody will have to admit the truth. What that looks like, who the fuck knows? Who's controlling it? Who knows? Why? What's their agenda? Who knows either? Lots of mysterious questions. But in the meantime, it's okay to ask. It's okay to have your faith. It's okay to have your religion, whatever religion you have. It's okay. But do not use religion as a driving force to destroy another person, human being, or nation, or their belief. Because that's not what those books, the Quran, or even Catholicism, that's not what they wanted. Regardless of what some experts say, it's not what they wanted. They wanted peace. They wanted love and respect for each other's faith. But some people kind of twist those books around and use it as their own narrative, and the driving force as to why the fuck we cause destruction. And I'm totally against that. But anyway, that's a different topic for a different day. I'm going to dive into a different style of episode on the next one. I will be doing these every now and then. If you guys have any ideas in regards to what other topics maybe we might address, it'd be sweet. I think on next week's episode, I will be touching on medical mysteries as well, going into that as well, and talking about vaccines and the effects it has on our kids, whether they're important or not. There's a lot of people that are anti-vaccine, some are pro-vaccine. Where do you stand on it? What's the controversy behind it? And we're going to talk some data. So, anyways, apart from that, thank you very much for enjoying the episode so far. It's about 7:35. Thank you very much. Enjoy the Niner game. Bang bang Niner gang. Thank you very much for listening. Like, subscribe, share, do whatever you want. Drop a like, comment, engage, and let's talk. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. Enjoy your drive wherever you're at. Have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. And goodbye. Thank you so much.